Hello, everyone. My name is Haley Cassidy, Americhem's Global Branding and Digital Marketing Leader. I'd like to thank you all for joining today's webinar, Color and Retention in Engineered Compounds Part 3, Building and Construction. Just to clarify the webinar title a little bit, this presentation will be given by our Americhem Engineered Compounds division that focuses mostly on indoor building and construction applications, such as window coverings, door trim, lighting panels, smart home panels, and so much more. Although we do have another division within Americhem that focuses specifically on outdoor applications, such as siding, roofing, and decking, today we will be focusing on more indoor-like applications that our Americhem Engineered Compounds division, or AEC as we refer to it as, specializes specifically in. All attendees are muted, so please send in your questions through the questions tab, and we will be addressing them at the end of our presentation during our Q&A segment. Today, we will start with a brief introduction of our panelists and who Americhem is, followed by the best ways to formulate indoor building and construction compounds with UV additives. We'll also talk about how color and appearance retention affects indoor building and construction products, and then testing methods and capabilities for optimizing performance. Lastly, we'll detail some real-life case studies in indoor building and construction applications, followed by a Q&A segment. Today, I am joined by Amy Waxman, Americhem Engineered Compounds Development Manager, and Tyler Malouche, Americhem Engineered Compounds Technical Service Engineer. I'll now turn it over to our panelists for them to give brief bios of themselves, followed by the rest of the presentation.
All right, thanks, Haley. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Tyler Malouche. I'm a Technical Service Engineer for Americhem Engineered Compounds. I have about 2 years total in the polymers industry, with one of those being at Americhem. I've held roles in design, manufacturing, production.
And hello, everyone. My name is Amy Waxman. I'm Development Manager for Americhem Engineered Compounds. I have a total of 8 years experience in the plastics compounding industry in cross-functional R&D, sales, and manufacturing roles. Okay, so a little about Americhem. What do we do? We're a privately held company with over 79 years of growth and innovation. We specialize in polymer solutions globally across several markets, including building and construction, medical, industrial, aerospace, and non-automotive vehicle. We're a global company with locations in North America, Asia, and Europe, and we're recognized as a leader in the compounding and custom color solutions industry. On the next slide, we'll introduce our Americhem Engineered Compounds business and the products we specialize in for the building and construction industry.
Okay, so as Amy mentioned, one of our big industries that we have here at AEC is our building and construction. At AEC, we focus on our developed technologies that can range anywhere from just regular custom colors and tints, all the way up to flavor and retardancy for high application materials like aerospace and automotive. We also offer a UV stabilization line, reinforcements, and wear and friction materials. These technologies are then put into our end-use products, such as window and door hardware, window coverings and motors, and also external components or outside features like decking. We have siding, PVC railings, vinyl accessories, and also interior light controls or anything that can be around an electrical source. On the next slide, we'll just give a kind of brief overview of how we go about developing these B&C compounds with our technologies.
So when it comes to developing building and construction compounds, we work with our customers to understand the end goals of their product. We match those needs with our uniquely formulated materials. We've broken it down into our 3 main concepts that we consider for developing B&C compounds. The first is talking about color retention and aesthetics, which would look at things like extending the life and visual appearance and weatherability of the material. Gloss, optical brighteners, texture, all things we consider with surface appearance. And then overall, the role color plays and where our custom color solutions are in effect. Second component is material enhancement properties. We're talking about the additives that are added to achieve desired performance. This would be strength and durability with reinforcements, improving processability and ease of use. Like, you don't want your window system parts squeaking when you're moving blinds and stuff. So that would be lubrication. And then overall fire safety, which is very critical for our BNC products. The last component, this is what we're talking about. This is where we put our technology to the test. So delivering consistent quality and performance, this is always our main focus. And we have a full product development and color test lab that we follow strict standards and test methods to achieve those superior results, even in the most demanding applications. It's important to understand that without these technologies, applications for plastics become very limited. This is what we're going to discuss in the next slide.
Okay, so with our building and construction industry, one of the main things that we love to focus on is our UV exposure. As we all know, the sun can be very harsh on a lot of different things in our lives, especially our plastics. So we'd love to understand this as much as possible, so then we know how to further move on from that, develop things that can just give our products a longer lifespan and also just help to reduce the cost on the customer overall. So when we try to understand our UV exposure effects, we basically look at three main things. These are our chemical reactions, our aesthetic effects, and then finally our degradation of properties. This is kind of like a trickle-down effect. So with our chemical reactions, something is happening molecularly, which then is seen aesthetically, which then tells us that, okay, something is degrading here and we need to go back and figure out what's happening to fix that. So with our chemical reactions, we see basically two main things happening. We have chain scission, which is depicted on the bottom picture on the right side of the screen, and we also have depolymerization. So with chain scission, you can see in the picture, we have this red arrow. That's basically the sun's radiation and the UV rays getting in between those polymer bonds and essentially just breaking that bond completely. What happens from there is your polymer chain then becomes shorter, and then you also have longer polymer chains. This is just a chain reaction, and then in a few years or months or whatever, then you'll essentially just end up with shorter chains overall, which then leads to your loss of molecular weight, which then leads to your loss of properties. With depolymerization, same thing is seen overall, but we have a free radical that forms after that polymer bond is broken. That free radical then bonds to another free radical, and then same thing, trickle down effect. You have shorter polymer chains forming with longer ones, but you overall end up with shorter ones with a loss of molecular weight. For our aesthetic effects, we know that something is happening chemically whenever we can see something aesthetically happening. So with anything clear like a polycarbonate or an acrylic, we can see yellowing or discoloration. If that's a colored polymer, then we have migration of our pigments and dyes. Something is coming up to that surface, and then we'll see fading, bleaching, cracking, crazing, chalking if it's a PVC product. And then overall just loss of surface aesthetics. So if there's a gloss on the product, that can start to diminish, or if there is a pattern or a texture, that can also start to diminish as well. This then says, okay, there's a degradation happening somewhere. With the degradation, we mostly see a loss of our mechanical properties, so your tensile strength, your flex strength. And then as we all know, when you lose molecular weight, your product just becomes brittle. So we don't like to see brittle products. Obviously, we love to see ductile failures if there is a failure within our products. But with UV, since it is so harsh, that we'll just end up with a brittle failure. So on the next slide, we'll kind of give an overview of how we love to go about protecting these products so that we don't see these harsh effects.
Okay, so as Tyler discussed, the majority of polymers are susceptible to degradation under extreme conditions. And when we're talking about stabilizing our materials, what is the message we're really trying to convey? Protect your plastics, right? So developing a building construction compound, we always consider UV stabilization as one of the most important ways to protect your product, because many of these materials will be exposed to sunlight, different light sources, moisture, changing temperatures. Factors we like to consider for our BNC compounds is lifespan of the product. So think long-term for building and construction. What is the surface that needs protection? Will it be indoor, outdoor? What types of light sources will it see? LED versus fluorescent, for example. The function of the product, this is really looking at property retention, what type of environmental elements and amount of exposure. So geographical locations come into play here, and then again, indoor versus outdoor. And of course, the base resin. On this slide, I'm showing an orbital diagram because for our color stabilizer packages, because a lot of times these additives are used in combination for a synergistic approach. Of course, you can use them individually, but working together, they produce enhanced effects. Some of the additives I'm calling out on this slide are UV absorbers. Those are UV radiation. They absorb UV radiation and release heat from the material. Hindered amine light stabilizers are going to quench that degradation reaction, and they offer long-term protection because they continue to regenerate for the lifetime of the product. Antioxidants would be for protecting against multiple heat cycles and obviously protect from oxidative degradation. And then the last one is for UV resistant additives. These have dual functions. For example, PTFE is a lubricant, but it's also inherently UV resistant. And then some of the pigments like carbon black and TiO2, they offer colorability, but they also bring some UV protection to the product as well. Some of our existing B&C products that we've utilized these color stabilizer packages with is our UV POM copolymer and our UV ABS, which are used for window and door hardware. We also have an extensive line of reinforced nylon 6, nylon 6/6, and PBT, which again would be used for window and blind applications as well. Continuing with color retention and aesthetics, we also consider surface appearance and color. So in our everyday lives, we see color, we feel color, we experience color. It's all around us. It is so important when our customers approach us with their vision of surface appearance and color, we translate that into the custom solution. This often starts with a color chip or a sample part or a mental picture even and description that we work to translate into a successful color match. AEC's ColorFast product line is exactly dedicated to this, achieving aesthetics, design, and performance goals. So aesthetically, we're taking into consideration pigment selection, light fastness, color strength, how those pigments will disperse and create a homogeneous surface appearance. Retention of color and gloss is very critical. And then, you know, an example of this would be, think about if your house has 25 light switch covers. You want all of them to match. They're all from the same color standard. And they may have been produced over multiple different lots, but you still want them to all look the same. That comes into our color development and tolerances. And then additionally, in a few years down the road, you want to install or replace a couple of those light switches. And again, you want the new ones to match the existing ones. And that's really the retention of color and those color stabilizer packages, which would allow for this. The second part of producing a successful product are the design objectives. So considering pigment resin compatibility, ideally we try to select colorants that have little effect on physical and mechanical properties, our lot-to-lot reproducibility. So is it a robust formula? And of course, you know, if color and appearance is the most desired property, there are times where you might sacrifice on other properties, but it's really finding the balance and understanding what are your end goals and the most important design objectives for the product. In the next slide, we're going to talk about a real life example of this. So for our first case study, this was for an industry leader for lighting systems. The customer required a very tight tolerance under our standard of Delta 1 for opaque colors. It was well below that. In addition to the tight color tolerance, there was multiple resins that we had to match to the same color standard. These included PC, ABS, and PBT, to name a few. AEC's solution for this customer was our FRPC 300 and FRPC 400 from our ColorFast product line. These are both flame retardant PCs that exhibit very good strength and impact properties. Additionally, the customer required very stringent UL burn and electrical compliance, and we were able to meet that. And also the reproducibility of that tight color tolerance, we achieved that for the customer as well. So obviously, the last few slides we're discussing a lot, focusing on our custom color solutions, but material enhancement properties are also critical for building and construction.
All right, so at Americhem, we love to, enhance our properties as much as we can. Our customers are important to us. So we want to produce the best products that we can and make sure that what we're saying we're giving them is what we are actually giving them. So with our material enhancement properties, we focus on three main things essentially, which are reinforcements, our lubricants, and our flame resistance. With our reinforcements, these can be seen for our Instruct product line. We can basically reinforce many different polymers, your nylons, POMs, PBTs, PCs. With our fibers and minerals is what we mostly see our customers wanting the most. The reason that we do this is, just to bulk up those properties a little bit, give a little bit more performance out of that polymer, a little bit more lifespan for that product so the customer doesn't have to replace them as often. And especially within the building and construction industry, these will be subjected to, a lot of different forces or just overall things that they have to hold up to. So we'd love to make sure that we can reinforce them as much as we can to have that longer life cycle. Within building and construction, we mostly see moving parts or parts that need vibration reductions. So with our windows, trims, and our doors, you have the sliding action or you have a rolling action with your blinds going up and down. So we like to reduce the vibration in there. And with the moving parts, all the excessive wear, that little bit of glass in there can just help give that little bit extra to the base resin. And as I mentioned, for our market applications, mostly windows, frames, trims, and doors, coverings, and also the internal hardware that goes into those applications. With our lubricants, we mostly do PTFEs and silicones, although we do have the abilities to do a lot more, such as graphites or aramids. As we all know, lubricants are there for a reason. If you have a little bit of friction or something's holding up, then lubricate it, and you should hopefully be able to overcome that. Also, the tribology effects that we see with polymers is very important to us. So our lubricants help to just understand that a little bit more and see how we can, get the best out of that polymer. With our lubricants, these are also great because they're internally lubricated instead of external. So this overall just cuts down on user maintenance, as you don't have to go back and grease your window frames every few months to make sure everything's running smoothly. And then also those greases or external lubricants can be very harsh for the polymers. So if they're internally lubricated, then you won't have that extra attack on the outside of the plastic itself, which also just helps to expand the life of that product. Within B&C, we mostly see, our moving parts, so gears, bearings, cams, latches, hinges, etc. This can also be seen with our InLube product line. Same thing, we can do a lot of nylons, PCs, PBTs, basically any resin system that might need that lubrication. With our flame resistance, we don't have a dedicated product line for this like we do with Instruct and InLube. However, we can take those resins and those formulations and make them into an FR product with our halogenated and non-halogenated systems. With our FR, we love to just eliminate one part of that fire triangle so that you don't have an actual flame that can come about within our B&C, especially when we do have electrical applications, like we have outlets, phone jacks, anything that can have that little electrical spark within there. We love to flame retard those materials, not only for the building aspect, but also for just the overall construction industry and the codes that we have to live up to. Our market applications we mostly see with this is our light switches, phone jacks, outlets, also a little bit of office furniture accessories such as grommets and raceways. And with our flame resistance, we do have the ability to test to UL 94 methods, and we also have a very expansive list that is actually certified by UL on their websites. We can also test to OSU testing, which is the Ohio State University heat release rate. This is seen in aerospace, as well as the FAR test, which is the Federal Aviation Regulation, also seen for internal products on aerospace equipment. All right, so playing into this a little bit, we're going to get into another case study. So this is for a window systems OEM. This particular application was blinds and shade hardware. Customer overall was just having trouble with premature wear with their mating parts. They're also seeing a lot of plate out during their molding, and they also had a very tight color standard that they had to stick to. That comes to them from the mating parts, as they are molded in 2 different molds. So when they are assembled, you don't want to see a difference between those colors, and you want it to look as cohesive as possible. Americhem's solution for this was our InLube PC TFSI. So this is a PC with a PT, Fe, and a silicone combination. We do have the ability to combine lubricants if needed through our developments and our trials, that we see that this would be the best approach. Our molded in color was accepted by the customer for their mating parts. So you can see a color difference visually, and also the DE CMC stuck to what their standards were set forth. The plate out was eliminated through the improved filler technology, which was the combination of the silicone and the PTFE, and also lubrication comes back to the PTFE and the silicone mixture. And just overall surface aesthetics, plate out can be harsh and can show on your products. So we were able to eliminate that completely and also stick on the color for their branding and just their overall retention of their color properties that they wanted.
So for our last case study, this was done for an office furniture customer that produces grommets and raceways. Our customer wanted to move away from their existing compounded material, and so we introduced them to our FR-ABS color line. This is a ColorCast product, and we developed for them FRA 203 and FRA 205. They're both FR-ABS, but I didn't mention that. So we developed a proprietary FR package designed for indoor light stability, which met the requirements for V0 flame rating at different thicknesses, in addition to indoor light stability. So if you think about an office setting, there's a lot of fluorescent lighting. And while it's not as harsh as outdoor sunlight, there still is degradation happening to your materials in those types of light sources. So indoor light stability is really critical for a lot of our BNT materials. Additionally, our FRA products provide ease of processability and high gloss appearance. And we were also required to do accelerated weather testing to prove out that our developed compounds retain color performance equal or better than their existing product. And we were able to accomplish that. Of course, just talking about all of our product lines and our technologies, we utilize extensive test methods to ensure quality and validation.
Okay, so as Amy mentioned, quality control and validation methods are very important to us, as we want to say what we are producing for the customer, we actually are producing. So our locations are ISO and IATF certified, so that the customer can rest assured that we have these certifications and we are sticking to them. We do have dedicated color match and development teams in our locations that can take our NBOs and turn them into a useful product for the end customer. We do have ASTM and ISO mechanical testing methods that we can produce, so this doesn't box us into only being able to do one or the other, as I know some specs are different, so they might require one or the other. Our results are interpreted by our highly skilled quality control team that we use great analytical testing methods within our labs to ensure quality products. As I did mention, we can test UL methods, and we have an extensive list of products that are listed by UL 94. We do incremental observations during our testing just to make sure that nothing is happening with the test itself, and the results that we are getting out actually are valid. And as Amy did mention, we can do UV conditioning. We have sites in Arizona and Florida that we can put our products out there into the climates and have them, experience that climate for the set amount of time. And per the ASTM standards, we will go out and check every so often based upon that standard to make sure that we are getting the best observations and recording as much information as we can. And if time is a constraint for UV conditioning, we also have the ability to do accelerated weathering as well.
So throughout our presentation, we mentioned a few of these brands, but this slide is really showing our full offering of branded products available to our customers. And we hope from the information that you learned here and previous webinars that you consider AEC for your engineered compound and custom color solutions in the future. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Amy and Tyler. Awesome presentation. I want to briefly mention here that for those of you on the line who are interested in learning more about our other side of the business focused on outdoor building and construction applications that you can see on the next page here. Here are a few of end applications that we also specialize in. As you can see here, it ranges widely from cladding to decking to roofing to fencing and rail, which were not covered in the presentation today since we were focusing more on indoor applications. And then on the next slide here, you can see some of our other product offerings that meet the needs of each one of those industries. Some of our most popular, well-known, and highly tested product lines that we've highlighted, such as our ECAP pre-color compounds, N-grain master batch for wood-like appearance, and N-Duramax UV stabilizers. On the next slide, another note is that this presentation was the final part of our three-part series, Color and Appearance Retention in Engineered Compounds, but our 3 must-have functional additives in fibers series that started back in February will pick back up in June with part 2 focused on floor coverings. So that would be things like carpet, synthetic turf. So you can sign up to be notified of all Americhem news on our website by going to the contact page and signing up for our monthly newsletter. We'll now move into the Q&A portion of our webinar. I'll be reading off the questions that have been submitted during the presentation and pass them on to our panelists for answering, but feel free to continue sending your questions in and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can during the presentation. We do also have 2 of our other industry experts on the line to help answer additional questions that cross all of our product lines and capabilities. So our first question is related to outdoor landscape products manufactured with polyethylene. So they're saying that the base resin is compounded with custom colored UV master batch. And the question is, how long might a product like that be expected to retain excellent physical integrity in its original color and appearance in some of the atmospheres that you talked about, like Florida and Arizona?
Tyler, I can take it. I mean, it really depends, I think, on the length of exposure and how harsh the conditions are. Obviously, they're going to come into play, but it's hard to put an exact amount of time really without understanding the exact application and conditions in which this product is installed.
Okay, and our next question here is related to that brand product page. What are some of the uses of your high-grav product?
I got that. So we can do metal filled products. So we can have stainless steels or iron filled products. So if you have, some type of application where you need like a little bit of conductivity in there, but you also will have a higher specific gravity, then that's where like our high grav products come into play, because we can put a little bit of stainless steel in there to get that little bit of conductance.
Yeah, I mean, there's also additional applications with anti-sap for these materials, military applications for replacing all metal type products. So these would be with our high grav. Also things that require a lot of impact, that need to take a lot of impact, or sound dampering, things like that as well.
Okay, our next question is, does Americhem have the capabilities to do UL 94 testing in-house?
So I can take this. So we follow all the UL 94 test methods, but we are not a certified lab to certify our materials for UL. So we send them out to be UL certified, and then obviously we maintain those certifications with the annual requirements from UL. But we can test those methods in our lab to confirm that our products are UL compliant.
Okay, and our next question, what is the correlation between accelerated and outdoor weathering?
I got this one. So with accelerated weathering, you mimic the conditions just a lot faster. So these actually aren't really put into the real world applications. They're put into a chamber that mimics the climate, which you get the same results just a little bit faster. So something that might take 3 or 4 years outside can take only 6 months in accelerated weathering. But with our typical UV conditioning, these are actually put outside and just allowed to just, sit there for 3 or 4 years, and then we'll test per the ASTM standard incrementally to see what is changing overall. Like color wise, we can do tensile testing if we have tensile bars out there to see just what is happening on that molecular level from the UV. So overall, conditioning is just a lot quicker instead of real life conditions.
Okay, and our next question is, can flame retardants have an effect on mechanical properties? How does it affect the UV of the product?
I can take this one. So they can, but I think it's really finding the balance of the required loading and what type of UL 94 burn you're required to pass for that material. So how heavily loaded the FR materials need to be in that product. But I mean, obviously, the higher you go on your loading, you might affect some of those mechanical properties, although there are ways to minimize it by adding in other synergists, which will help bring some additional mechanical and elongation properties back into that material. So it's really just finding the right combination of additives to minimize any of those effects. And with UV, we have multiple flame retardant and UV stabilized products, and there isn't an effect on the overall UV. I mean, it makes the product more heat resistant overall.
Okay, our next question is, does Americhem offer weathering or UV exposure testing on the products offered?
You want to give that one to Mike, Amy?
Yeah,
Mike, if you want to
I know
jump in.
yes, we do, but I don't know the details about which.
Yeah, actually, I would forward this over to Kelly. And the short answer is yes, but I think Kelly can give a lot more detail around it.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kelly Gager. I'm the development manager for our building and construction side, mostly focusing on our exterior building and construction applications. And yes, the answer is yes. We actually have one of the largest weathering laboratories for a privately held company where we support all of our end applications in weathering, both in accelerated and for outdoor exposure. So absolutely, that is something that we can help when we're designing and developing products for our customers.
Okay, thank you guys. So that wraps up our Q&A portion of the webinar. I'd also like to briefly mention here how you can ask us further questions following the webinar. If you have any other questions, you can certainly connect with our panelists on LinkedIn, but you can also go to the Americhem website and ask us questions through the instructions that you see on this slide. If you go to americhem.com and click contact us, then choose the contact form that states I have a general corporate inquiry, and choose the option to send that contact form to marketing. I'll be receiving all of those questions directly and follow up as soon as possible with our panelists. You can also take a screenshot of these directions, but we will be sending out a follow-up email with directions on the email and a link to our contact page. So I'd like to thank our panelists for their time today and thank all of our attendees for joining Americhem in this important discussion about color and appearance retention in engineered compounds for building and construction applications. Thank you again for attending our webinar today, and that concludes our presentation. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.